Welcome to Culture Talk. This is the segment where we talk about culturally relevant topics and how you can use them to start conversations about your faith. I'm joined today with astrophysicist Jeff Zweerink. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, Sandra. Good to be here on the segment.
I should say Merry Christmas because we're coming up on Christmas and we're going to talk about a very specific topic relating, well, something that comes up every year during Christmas, and that is what is the Christmas star. So first, let's talk about the biblical passages that describe the star and how do they actually describe this star?
Well, the big account in the Bible where we talk about the Christmas star is actually in Matthew. After Jesus had been born, there were a group of wise men, magi, that had come into Jerusalem, and they talked to Herod and his advisors, and they were asking him, where is this person who's been born the king? Because we saw his star in the east. And so they talked with the religious leaders there, and eventually they realized that it was pointing off to, or that the king would have been born in Bethlehem. So they directed him off to Bethlehem. And then the magi went there, and there's a description of how they went on their way and saw the star where it rose ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. And then they went in and worshiped Jesus, and they were warned in a dream to go back a different way so as not to give anything to Herod. So that's kind of the basic description, but there's not really a lot given about the details of what the star looked like or what it was.
So according to the biblical passages then, there was something in the sky that was detectable by the Magi, and it stopped over the place of Christ's birth. So is there some sort of phenomenon that would fit this description?
Well, it's really interesting to think about that, because I think there are kind of a number of things. And part of why I'm pointing out that there's not just a lot said there, that we need to be careful about over-interpreting what it is. And the common things is, you got this big star and a beam of light pointing down to the manger. The fact that the religious leaders in Jerusalem hadn't seen this means that that's not the correct way to look at this. This had to be something relatively subtle that only people who are studying the sky would have recognized and had some appreciation for it. And so there are a number of ideas out there. Each of them have their merits and their things that are challenging for them. Some people say it's a conjunction where either a planet gets or goes very close to where a star is, or maybe multiple planets are in conjunction, or two planets in conjunction with a star. There are some who've argued that maybe these are comets. My boss, Hugh Ross, thinks the best explanation is a nova, which is a kind of star that gets bright and dims for a while and will come back and be bright again. So there are a number of different astronomical phenomena that might have this sort of signature to it. Again, when you recognize that this isn't a look up in the sky and it's just plain and obvious to see, it's actually kind of a subtle feature.
Okay, so there are a number of things that it could be, that the star could have been, but is there any astronomical evidence to say that something unusual occurred around the time of Christ's birth?
Well, it really kind of depends on what the actual explanation is. I mean, if it was a comet, that would have been something that multiple people would have recorded. In fact, the Chinese and other astronomers had been, or people looking at the sky, recorded events like that. So if it was a comet, probably would have had some other records of it. And we might have even been able to see it. It might have been a periodic comet so that we would have seen it since then. If you're talking a nova, that's probably not going to have much other record, because that would have happened for a while and probably have no record beyond that. If you're talking conjunctions, those are the sorts of things we can trace back very accurately, the motions of the planets and where the stars are in the sky, and see if there are conjunctions. And so there are some tools we have to investigate what this phenomenon might have been. And again, recognizing that it's something visible to people who are looking at the sky with their naked eye, but also not something so bold and obvious that just the random person out standing in the field would have seen it.
So it sounds like what we learned from this story is that these magi had to be students of the word, and they had to be very aware and pay attention to those subtle details. Like you're saying, it wasn't obvious and bold to the average person, but for those students of the word, that they were able to know what to look for and know how to find the Christ child. So how would we use kind of that theme of just being students of the word, and what this example gives us as a way to kind of have a conversation about our faith.
Well, this is a place where I think my boss Hugh Ross has something that's really profound. Is, his argument is that the wise men that came and saw were actually had connections back to Daniel from the Old Testament. And so these were people who would have known about God, known something about the Israelites and who they were, and would have been studying the scriptures and looking for something coming like this. And so when they see this particular phenomenon in the sky, whatever it was, they would recognize the significance of it and begin their search for the Christ child. And so I think that is just something that reminds us as Christians that we need to be very knowledgeable of what the Bible has to say. One, so that we're not led astray by popular ideas out there that really aren't in the Bible. Like I said, the star that's just this beam of light pointing down at the manger, that just doesn't fit with the way Scripture describes it. But also so that when people ask us questions, we can be able to articulate, why is it that we have this hope that Jesus actually is the Son of God and that there is a God who created the universe for us to know him? The more we know about Scripture, the more studied we are, and the more it's a part of our DNA and how we live, the more naturally that's going to come out in our conversations.
Thank you so much for that, Jeff. I really appreciate the points that you bring up. And this whole story is such a great reminder that Christ came for the Jew and the Gentile. He came for the shepherds who were unclean, but they were able to be standing in front of the Christ child. And also he came for the students, for the people like the Magi who were deep thinkers and scientifically minded. So it's such a great encouragement to read stories like this and to be reminded that Christ came for all of us. If you want to hear more on this topic, go to reasons.org and search for the Christmas star.